What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. It's going to be a long bye week, so it's time to reflect on where we've come, what differences this team has from last year's team, where there's been progress, where there's been step back, and just really understanding where this team is, taking stock, using the bye week to assess what we think we're seeing, comparing it to the numbers, and really just diving in deep. Going to talk about some folks that always will dive deep in your case. Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Pete, hop in.
What's going on, D? Yeah, really interesting taking a look at these numbers as we'll go through it now on both sides of the football here in a second. And I think there was a lot of surprises for me personally. Some of these numbers are a lot closer to last year than I thought they were. Some of them, are obviously on the opposite side of the spectrum. But, it'll be interesting to kind of go through the discussion, kind of go position by position in a sense, because that's really, at the end of the day, building this roster out has been Mario Cristobal's number one thing. They aren't where they need to be, but obviously a ton of improvements across the board here and still some definite room for growth.
Let's start with some numbers before we get into the team. Some numbers that really caught my attention, which is how many people watched this Georgia Tech Miami game. ABC put it out, 3.5 million viewers, peak of 5.3 million viewers. The best cable college football audience since week one. For the Miami Hurricanes against Georgia Tech at noon. I was shocked to see that, quite frankly. But it shows you what kind of brand Miami has, what kind of brand Cam Ward has, and really how many people tune in. You wish they tuned into a more exciting game. It was pretty boring with the way that Georgia Tech played. And, of course, Miami didn't play very well and took the loss. So not excited about that part of it. But I think as you get into renegotiations, when you get into realignment, things like that, the brand power of a good Miami team is starting to show itself. And this is something we talked about all offseason. If Miami takes care of business, puts out a Miami-type product, people are going to tune in more so than the average SEC team.
And it's crazy, D, because, back in the days, they used to always say prime time, that, the night games was where you would get most of the views. But this is a noon game against a Georgia Tech team that it's not like they have been lighting the world on fire this year either, right? So just goes to show you, like you said, the brand Miami, fans wanted to see Miami lose, obviously. So I'm sure as they started checking the score and seeing that it was a tight game, they tuned in, even harder. But no, definitely. I mean, you make a good point about the renegotiations and the conference realignment and things of that nature. These are all things that Dan Radakovich has to work with. We talk about the resume and the history of Miami's program, right? We haven't seen this consistent success in the last 20 years. But at the end of the day, this is the sort of stuff that the TV networks and the conferences really care about.
Yep. And it's, again, proof of concept for someone like Rudy Fernandez, Joe Echeverria, that when you invest in the program, you get results and you get eyeballs. That money doesn't go directly into UM's pocket, but it all comes back to Miami. If people are watching you, you're going to end up getting compensated, especially as we get into a new future where it's really going to be about business and which teams can generate the most views, draw the most eyeballs, have the strongest brand. I think Miami is poised to do very well financially in that market, assuming they keep winning, keep putting out exciting players like Cam Ward. But like I said, I wanted to dive in here the bye week to really analyze where this team has come, how far it's come, where maybe it's taken a step back, and all those things. So we went to the stats. Like to look at FBS versus FBS stats, only throw away the FCS games, which don't really tell us much, and then see where Miami's at. And some of these surprised me, Pete. But let's start on the record, right? So this time last year, Miami had just lost to Florida State. Tough game with Emory Williams at quarterback, falling to a 6-4 record. Obviously, right now, 9-1. So significant improvement in that area.
Yeah, obviously, look, they found a way to win some of these games. They could have had a couple losses, but that is not the case. And you look at just that's something you can't put into. You can say it's a Cam Ward thing, but I also think that shows the growth of a lot of the guys that are on this roster. A lot of new faces, 100%, but finding a way to win those games, it's valuable experience that is really, it's learned over time, and coming together as a team the way that they have. I mean, I think it's definite that they've stuck together in some of these games that they wouldn't have pulled out last year, Cam Ward or not.
Yeah, and November's been a tough month for Miami historically. Obviously, you just took a loss right here. Last year, they ended up losing 2 out of their final 3, beat Boston College, lost to Louisville, and lost in their bowl game to Rutgers. Perfect world, Miami doesn't lose any more games, because that means they're holding the trophy at the end of the year. If they lose one more game, maybe in the college football playoff, that's extremely successful year. That means you won the ACC. If you lose in the next month, could spell trouble as far as expectations not being met with a great quarterback like Cam Ward. So we'll see where it ends up. It's going to be a better record no matter what, but how you end will make a huge difference in the perception of the season. But
yeah, I was going to say this, that 100%, I think recruiting wise too, keeping that momentum with some of these guys that they're trying to flip here down the stretch. Yeah, it's not that, if they lose another game, it couldn't happen, but I think you give yourself a much better shot at flipping those guys if you get the hype and the momentum around a playoff game and things of that nature.
Yep. And look, bottom line, right now you have a 3-win swing, 6-4, 9-1, 3 wins going in the right direction. To this point, extremely positive year to year. Switching to scoring offense and offense in general, you're going to see a similar story with pretty much all of these stats. Last year, Miami scoring offense, 38th in the nation. Again, it's FBS versus FBS only, 30.1 points per game. This year, first in the nation, 43.8 points per game. So you're talking about almost 14-point jump, 2 touchdowns in scoring offense, which is, remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of that is Cam Ward, but I think that receiver group has come together in a big way. I think you really have a complete group there, and you're probably still missing that dynamic game breaker, as special as X has been and all the records that he's breaking. But I think Isaiah Horton and Jacoby George and him all bring something different to the table. And look, you don't necessarily have that guy that at the goal line you throw it up to and you have him go get it. But Isaiah Horton, I think, is growing into that role somewhat.
Yeah, no, receiving core is better, tight end room is better. This is what it is. It's the best offense in the country. You look at these stats; they tell a pretty clear story. Number 1 in scoring offense, also number 1 in yards per play this year. First with 7.4 yards per play. Last year, pretty efficient in yards per play, 25th in the nation, 6.1. So you took a good offense efficiency-wise in terms of yards per play, took it to the best in the country. Yards per pass, major improvement here. You saw the passing game collapse last year as Van Dyke really got into a shell passing. Last year, 57th in the nation in yards per pass, 7.5 an attempt. Almost 2 more yards per attempt here. Miami goes up to 4th in the nation, 9.6 yards per attempt, and they're throwing it quite a bit. The rush yards per attempt, this was surprising. When I thought Miami had a bigger leap here, they're 20th last year, 5.0 yards per attempt. This year, same thing, 20th, 5.3 yards per attempt. So improved slightly per attempt, but basically same place and a good healthy place running the football.
Yeah, I think obviously having the quarterback threat to run as well helps that situation. But I'm surprised that you were surprised, because to me it feels like a pretty similar run game to last year, D.
Yeah, I just think player to player, Martinez and Fletcher are much better players than Parrish and Chaney. But these, I think you see that more in the short yardage, certainly, where Miami's become extremely potent in short yardage, where last year and the last few years they've been weak. So that's one area where there's been huge improvement. We'll talk about that with the next stat here. But yeah, you got a little bit more explosive, but not really. You're still trying to get those big explosive runs. I thought maybe you'd see something from a Chris Johnson, but you haven't had those explosive runs aside from a Jordan Lyle, AJ Allen, where you go 50+ yards to the house.
Yeah.
The third down conversion, I think this is where you really see the running game come into focus, as well as Cam Ward. Last year, 63rd in the nation, 38.7% of your third downs. You are now up over 50% here in 2024. Number 1 in the nation with 55.36% of your third downs being converted. I think that speaks, number 1, to Cam Ward. Number 2, to the down and distance with the running game. You're not taking losses. And then, of course, your short yardage conversions on 3rd and 4th down increased considerably with Martinez and with Fletcher.
Yeah, and then I didn't have it up there for some reason, but giveaways, we were 109 in the country last year with 1.8 per game last year at this point, and now 36. So have made a huge jump there, and that's 1.1 turnovers per game.
Yeah, that to me is a major difference. We talked about it going into the season. Why we thought this offense was going to take such a huge leap is it was pretty good last year in a lot of ways. But the reason it didn't feel like it was a good offense was because you were so bad giving the ball away. Tyler Van Dyke, obviously the biggest culprit, 109th in the nation in giveaways, 1 point in a game. That's huge. Now you move to 36, which is solid, 1.1. So you're explosive. You're running the ball better. You're converting better third downs. But the giveaways, a major difference. And again, both Cam Ward being better with the turnovers, and then you're removing Tyler Van Dyke, who had just become a major liability protecting the ball. That's when you see that huge swing, and it's made a huge difference in this offense where you go from, let's say, a top 30 type offense on paper with the giveaways, allowing it to play quite a bit lower than what the ranking was. Now the number one offense in the country, according to pretty much every important metric. So this is not a surprise, I'm sure, to our listeners, but a major swing in this category.
Yeah, and just kind of looking ahead a little bit, I think it is a good sign, D, because look, you can't expect every quarterback, whether it's a transfer or one of the guys on the roster, to have statistically one of the best seasons in the country, right? So whoever's the guy next year, we can't expect them to put up those same numbers as Ward, but you can hope for them to be probably better than Van Dyke was, especially during that last season here at Miami. So you improve upon that, and you're in a good situation, even if it's not, as we see here, in the top 3 or 4 in pretty much across the board, except in the running game, which is still top 20 in the country. So I think it's a good sign for how the roster is being built and the culture that's been instilled.
And if you remove the turnovers from last year's numbers, you're not going to be as good as you are this year offensively, where you're elite. But you would have seen significant improvement in scoring offense. You're 38th with all those turnovers, especially in the red zone. There was some major turnovers. NC State rings a huge bell as far as red zone turnovers. You remove some of that and you play more efficiently. That scoring offense improves considerably, and the offense in general takes a big leap forward. You're passing the ball better. I just think Van Dyke's not only the turnovers, but going into a shell following the turnovers really hampered this offense last year. So if you improve on that without necessarily being Cam Ward, you're still going to be a pretty good offense. But obviously, we've gotten used to the good life here with Cam Ward, the number one offense in the country. I don't think we want to take a huge step back. That will be the story of the offseason, is how we replace the quarterback position. But look, this has been exactly what you wanted when you added Cam Ward.
Yeah, and I think now as we flip over to the defensive side of the ball, D, it's obviously the numbers aren't as pretty here, but a little bit surprising that the numbers are closer to last season than I thought they would be.
Yeah, I think people are going to listen to this and say that doesn't pass the eye test, and I agree. This does not pass the eye test. These are the stats, FBS versus FBS only. I think the big context would be Miami was really good in non-conference this year defensively, had a great game against Florida, played a ton of snaps against USF and held up well, completely dominated Ball State. So those games, I think, are really helping Miami's numbers here, whereas ACC play, Miami's been really bad. One of the worst teams in the ACC in all these categories. So while the stats are going to surprise you how similar they are, I think the reason it feels worse, and I do think the defense has taken a significant step back, is because Miami did much better on the front end of the schedule defensively than they've done here in conference play. So let's just get right to it. Scoring defense in 2023, they were 48th in the nation, allowing 24.1 points per game. This year, slipped 10 spots to 58th in the nation, allowing 24.7 points per game. Again, that's a number that's a lot bigger in ACC play, but not where you want to be, 58th in the country in scoring defense, and it feels worse just because of how you've been lately. Yards per play, similar story. You were 36th in the nation last year, 5.1. Slip a little bit to 43rd in the nation this year, but still 5.1 yards per play. So the efficiency has not necessarily changed when you just look at the raw numbers, Pete.
Yeah, and listen, 5.1 yards per play allowed. It's not great, but it's not a leap by any stretch, right? So Obviously, they've dropped off there, and we'll get into the explosives here, which again is a number that skews everything here. But yeah, pretty close as it is in terms of how many points they allowed per game last year. But that Ball State game, you're right, is kind of skewing these numbers, acting like, we try to do FBS stats, but it's almost acting like an FCS game in a sense.
Yeah, and like ACC, it's just been a lot worse. And that's why I think this defense is a lot worse than last year. But USF ran so many plays and you played good in that game. And then Florida, an SEC opponent, just played much better than you have against ACC opponents. So I think that's all factoring in here. But we're just giving you the stats. We didn't know what the stats were going to say when we did this exercise. So it's interesting. Yards per pass, 2023, you were 52nd in the nation, 7.1. Now, 31st in the nation, yards per pass, 6.4, which again surprises me that you'd improve in this stat, because last year you had Kitchens, you had James Williams, you had Jaden Davis, you had the Corey Couch. You didn't have superstar defensive backs, but I would think the defensive back position has taken a step backwards this year. But again, yards per pass has gone down. Your ranking has gone up about 20 spots. ACC is different. Don't yell at me in the comments. I agree with you. This is not what I'm seeing on film, but these are the numbers. But then here's a big drop-off, Pete, and we'll talk about why this might have been. Yards per rush allowed. 2023 with former FRM client, your boy Leonard Taylor. Miami was 20th in the nation in yards per rush, 3.5. Guidry did some really nice things to stop the running game. Think about the Clemson game, some different formations where he was able to switch the fronts, cause some confusion. He played bear. He played 3-3-5. He did a lot of different things to cause problems. 20th in the nation yards per rush last year with Branson Dean, with Leonard Taylor. Similar linebacking core, better safeties against the run, certainly with James Williams and Cam Kitchens. This year, dropping to 58th in yards per rush allowed, 4.1. That passes the eye test. It seems like there's been a drop, and that's a healthy drop. It's almost 40 spots. So that to me checks out with what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I don't think either one of these teams had a great run stopper in terms of the interior of the defensive line. But I think because of the injury issues last year, like you said, Guidry had to get a little bit more creative up front, a lot of odd man fronts, 3-man fronts. And, it's tough because this year that D-line should be on paper the strength of this defense, and it's tough. What are you going to do? Have 3 down linemen when you have those guys that you have? And, I'm not sure that anyone's down to try something different defensively right now, but I'm not sure that taking one of those guys off the field is a solution right now. So that's just my opinion on it.
Yep. Here's a stat that I think is a major disappointment if you're a Hurricane fan, which is sack percentage. This is the percentage of snaps that you're sacking the opposing quarterback, percentage of dropbacks, right? So if the other team's running a lot, it doesn't affect the stat. It's basically how often they drop back to pass and how often they get sacked. 2023, 40th in the nation, 7.33%. 2024, 40th in the nation, 6.85%. So why is it so disappointing? You have Ruben Bain coming back as a sophomore. Obviously, he missed some time, but you added Tyler Barron. You add Elijah Alston. You get back Akeem Mesidor. You bring back Francisco Malinois. I at least expected this number to be in the top 10, top 15 at worst. And that would have made a huge difference in how this defense performed. But with the sack percentage really not improving at all, despite the fact that last year it was Ruben Bain and nothing else. You had a lot of injuries. Jaden Wayne playing a lot of snaps as a true freshman. It was really the Ruben Bain show and the Kiko Malinois show.
Mesidor was out.
And you still had the same production. I think Kiko Malinois not blitzing as much, not getting as many sacks has hurt this number. And then just disappointment from the other players up front.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, that's it's pretty crazy how some of these numbers are so close. This being one of them, especially since they put a lot of resources into this defensive line group. Let's see, man. I hope they can finish the season out strong because I think there's so much ability there. And look, maybe the bye week wakes them up a little bit.
Yep. Third down percentage, again, not a huge difference year to year. Last year, Miami's 30th in the nation, 34.76%. There's an area where Guidry prides himself. This year, you dropped 7 spots to 37th in the nation. Still not bad. 35.09% opponent third down percentage. So I wonder how many of these third downs are just so backbreaking. Like the 3rd and 18 against Georgia Tech. If it's just the third downs that are being converted are hurting you. You also have 4th downs as well, maybe more of those. But Miami does not feel like they're getting off the field when they need to. This stat won't necessarily show it, but I was surprised to see these numbers so close. And I think the ability for other teams to go for a 4th down, and then the types of third downs that are being converted, last week's 3rd and 18 being the biggest example, that's really hurting us.
Well, and that goes into this next thing right here, D, and that's obviously the explosive plays, which is the biggest difference, and probably why some of these numbers are as weird as they are in terms of comparison to last year.
Yeah, this is where Miami's taking a huge step back. I think as much as people complained, rightfully at times, about Cam Kitchens selling out for big plays, he was a very good tackler. And James Williams, he missed some tackles, certainly, but he also made some tackles and he covered some ground. So I think that's made a difference here. But yeah, your explosive plays allowed me 20 plus more yards per play. This is scrimmage yards per play. Anything over 20 plus, we'll categorize as explosive. Miami's 32nd in the nation last year, a good number. This year, 91st. So Miami's 91st in the nation in preventing 20 plus yard plays. I think of all the stats we've talked about on the defensive end, this one's the most telling, the one that most accurately reflects what our eyes are telling us, that this defense is having a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and it's been frustrating, obviously, because you can't really pinpoint. Obviously, everyone just wants to point at the defensive backs, but there's a lot of different things when it comes to the alignment. The guys just don't look very prepared pre-snap, and it's almost like they're getting beat before the ball's even snapped on some plays, D. So, there's a lot that goes into that. Again, there's still a few games left in the season here, and I don't think it helps the defense's case that the offense has been so good, right? So we're comparing it to the other side of the ball, obviously. But I'm just like, if you were to look at some of those numbers without looking at the scoring defense, you'd say, well, it's not a very good defense, but they shouldn't be the reason you're losing games the way the offense is playing, right? So, I'm sure Lance Roffers has some analytical reasons why, this is the case, but I definitely think that it's something where, the offense they've had to pick the defense up, but there's still some time left in the season, man. So all could be forgotten and forgiven.
Yeah, we'll have to be a lot of
there'll be a lot. It's gonna have to be a lot better, but they go out there and lock down the last 3 games of the season here, and you get some momentum going into the playoffs, and you say, all right, this is more like what we expected to see. Again, that's taking a big jump there, saying that they can do it 3 games in a row. But on the optimistic side, why not? You have a bye week here, and they didn't look great defensively coming out of the bye last time and for the Louisville game, but they did come out, playing hard, and the team was ready to go.
And let's talk about some folks where the eye test matches the taste test, and that is Islas Canarias, right there in the Dayland food court, aka the dining pavilion. This place is the #1 Cuban restaurant in the world, in Miami, you name it, it is the best. Authentic Cuban cuisine going back 40 years, and now you get it right there in the heart of Miami in Dayland. You got 7 types of croquetas. You got the classic ham, and then variations. You got kimchi, kind of Korean fusion. You have, the Eileen, who is the daughter of the proprietors of Islas Canarias, is one of the top chefs in Miami. She went to Korea and picked up those flavors, so you can have that angle to it. Of course, if you're traditional, you got the traditional croquetas. Plus, you got chickpea croquetas if you're not eating meat. They got everything under the sun. And then, of course, they got the classic locations out west. You look at the awards. I mean, they win Croqueta of the Year pretty much every single year. New Times, Miami Herald, you name it, they win it. This is the spot. Ask a Cuban. If you know, Islas Canarias, right there in Dayland Mall. One thing that caught my attention, Pete, that came out on these post-game interviews when they're talking to different analysts, was Louis Riddick was he said 2 very interesting things. Number one, he said that he had Cam Ward slightly over Shedeur Sanders for the top quarterback in the country, even though Cam really had a tough game, missed the checkdowns repeatedly. was hunting for big plays, kind of Aaron Rodgers-esque in the way he was playing this game on the negative side. That was one thing that caught my attention. Louis Riddick, former NFL exec, did the game as the announcer, the color guy for the Georgia Tech game. He said he had Cam Ward slightly over Shedeur as the top quarterback in the draft. Then number two, he was pretty open saying that Lance Guidry got out schemed by Georgia Tech. And that's not something you often hear from these commentators. They sit with these coaches for pre-game meetings and there's a rapport. They don't usually just go out and say, hey, this guy got out schemed. That was pretty jarring to hear from a Louis Riddick that Guidry got out schemed. I know it's not surprise to fans saying it. You saw multiple times where they had more hats than we did getting to the edge. You saw some confusion, guys not knowing where to line up. A lot of things that doesn't make that statement surprising, but the fact that he said it, I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it was just so disappointing. I said it yesterday on the show, D, and I know we continue to harp on this loss, but it is a bye week, so we don't have anything to look forward to this week. But it was just disappointing too because, like, you look at some of these other quarterbacks who have had their way with Miami's defense this year. Kyron Drones, I don't want to say he had his way with Miami's defense, but he made some plays that really kept them alive in that game. But Kyron Drones, Mendoza had already shown some good things on tape during the year, even though he hadn't put up huge numbers. Tyler Shuck, even we knew he had some ability. You knew those guys had something to them, right? And they had the ability to hurt this defense. With Haynes King coming into this game beaten up, the backup quarterback situation not looking good, the running back Jamal Haynes getting hurt on the first drive, it was kind of like, okay, yes, some of these other teams have had their best offensive days against Miami, but like we've really got to mess things up here for them to have a lot of success offensively. And that was the case. So I think that's what made it such a glaring thing for Louis Riddick to say at the, watching it from the point of view that he does, where he understands the sort of talent in terms of NFL talent and high level elite college talent that is on each of these teams. And he understood that Miami, really should have had the advantage on paper.
Yep. So look, is there bulletin board material for coaches? I know for players, there certainly is. If there is bulletin board material for coaches, this has to be top of the list for a guy like Lance Guidry, who's got a lot of pride. He is the guy here with the spotlight on him in these last few games. You're playing a Wake Forest team with a veteran quarterback, with the unusual offense, with that slow mesh that can make you look bad if you're not prepared. You got a week to prepare for that with the bye week, and then you have Syracuse at the Carrier Dome, all the makings of a shootout with the surface, with the veteran quarterback on the other side, with their ability to throw the ball. Rondé Gatson, a South Florida native, putting up big numbers. So two teams that are going to threaten you. Can Miami get it together, play well on defense in these last two games, and then go into that SMU game where everybody's going to be talking about SMU putting up a ton of points? Again, assuming you get to that point, which is no guarantee at all. That's a great opportunity for the narrative of the season to be rewritten on the defensive end. But to this point, I would be lying if I said there's been signs that that's going to happen. Every time I think there's going to be a breakthrough, there's a step back. So we all know what this week is about. On top of getting healthy, on top of Cam Ward becoming a little more comfortable taking what the defense gives him, this is really about Lance Guidry shutting up some of the doubters who have very good reasons to doubt based on what they've seen, and 3 opportunities, at least 2, hopefully 3, to show what he can do.
Yeah, and look, with SMU, it'll be interesting to see tonight what happens with some of these, well, not some of these, but the playoff rankings tonight, right? Does Miami stay ahead of SMU in the rankings? It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, but like at the end of the day, Miami controls its own destiny. Went to go to the AC Championship game and take care of business. Some folks that have been taking care of business for a year. That is the Miami Hurricane Team Store celebrating their first birthday. This is the team store run by Harry Rothwell. Mr. Canes, you've seen him selling merch since you've been a kid. If you're like me, he's been around forever. He's now at the Hurricane Team Store across the street from campus next to the Thesis Hotel, MiamiHTS.com if you're out of state. First year birthday. So until November 16th, which is the end of this week, enjoy 20% off everything store-wide. That's 20% off all the Miami gear you love. Perfect for repping your Canes in style. Swing by the the store in person, or again, MiamiHTS.com. Certain exclusions apply, but man, there is so much gear available. Canes baseball, Canes football, Canes basketball, which is rolling. Pete, you've been all over that coverage. Get your Camp for Heisman shirt. I think it's still good. I think Camp's still right in the thick of that campaign. Needs to turn it up with the checkdowns and not hunting for so many big plays, but he had a big statistical game. He's right in the Heisman race. And of course, the best way for Cam Ward to win the Heisman and for that shirt that you can get for 20% off at the team store to look good is if he wins the ACC championship, something Miami has never, ever done. So a lot to look forward to. Again, this kind of checkup here, see where we're at. I don't know how much it tells us other than the offense has taken a big step forward, and Miami's given up way too many explosive plays.
Yeah, and thank you for Cam Ward for being here, because it might be pretty similar to what we saw last year. So the numbers are telling, but again, I'll take 9-1 at this point in the season with everything ahead of you.
Yep. So
all right, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel, everyone. We will be back tomorrow with these bye week blues, man. It's tough to go into the bye week coming off the loss, but it's a much needed bye week. Get this team healthy, get them back revved up, ready to go. And we'll be back tomorrow here on the CanesInSight Daily Podcast. Like, subscribe, go Canes.
And we'll be live with Mike Ryan. He's got a lot of hot takes in the holster. I've seen him in the group chat, so we'll have some fun. Get your questions in on those live shows. Go Canes.
This an insight to the Canes, and you know we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew. Down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news. Cause it's all about the you. And nobody do it like CanesInSight. Nobody do it like CanesInSight. Nobody do